people are scared. I know some people is scared that they can be getting the virus at the facilities.
This advocate says that migrant workers are afraid of getting sick, getting tested, losing their jobs, and that more needs to be done to help them out.
It's difficult to know the history of these street names, to know the history of the people after whom these streets are named, and to realize that these are the examples that are being lifted up in our community.
Some streets in Windsor are named after slave owners, and according to a Black historian, it's time we start talking about them. What an absolutely wicked storm last night. Tree damage across Windsor-Essex and into Chatham, Kent. 2 tornadoes touching down near London. 22 degrees outside right now, bit windy as well. Colette Kennedy has all the details tonight. I'm Chris Ensing, thanks for joining us. Today, the University of Windsor outlined an action plan on how it will be tackling anti-Black racism on campus. Now, this follows yesterday's apology over its statement in response to the death of George Floyd, the Black man who was killed by police in Minneapolis. That statement was criticized by numerous student groups, and now the school is vowing to take action, but reaction to that promise, well, it's mixed. The CBC's Tamina Aziz joins us live from the university's campus. Tamina, this action plan also came with an updated statement on the killing of George Floyd. How's it different from the one released last week?
Yes, Chris, this here is the latest statement, and it's much longer than the one that they released last week, and that is because it includes action items that you mentioned. The key difference here is that the statement explicitly mentions anti-Black racism, which they didn't do last week, and we know that they were criticized for not doing so. And in terms of the action plan, there are 4 measures that they want to put in place. 1, establishing an anti-racism, an anti-Black racism task force with representation from students to staff. Now, the goal is to identify necessary actions to deal with racism on campus, and it will be established over the coming months, beginning its work this fall. 2, the university will establish a training and education framework to raise awareness around anti-Black racism. Training will be mandatory for all senior administrators and Board of Governors members. 3, the university says it will also look into a partnership with the Ontario Human Rights Commission to implement things like a racial demographic data collection framework. And lastly, it plans to work with the Office of Human Rights, Equity and Accessibility and other departments at the school to commission an external review of the university's processes, policies, and programs.
Now, Tamina, you took this to leaders within the Black community who are also students at the university. What are they saying about this plan?
That's right, Chris. I spoke to 2 students here at the University of Windsor, Jeremiah Bowers and Josh Lamers. Their reactions to the statement were quite different. They were both cautious, but Bowers is optimistic and Lamers was not. Bowers says this is a step in the right direction towards meaningful progress. Take a listen.
They're a result of, I think, years of students demanding change, and obviously with momentum being as it is right now, it is the perfect time to act. Oftentimes with university task forces, yes, they collect a lot of information, but then what happens with that information? And so we have to be very careful that we're not falling into the same trap of just gathering information, but like there's no calls to action.
Did anyone see anything in terms of hiring? I saw no commitment to Black faculty being hired in tenureship positions. I saw nothing around reallocating funds, especially in times of like terms of a pandemic, reallocating funds to ensure anything related to anti-Black racism. So don't let terms like equity, community inclusion cloud the term anti-Black racism in that experience. I saw no commitment to space for Black students. I saw no commitment to an anti-Black racism institute in which Black scholarship out of Windsor University can come out of, and in which a Black student space could be housed. Instead, I'm seeing committee this, report that, review this. And frankly, didn't we already do this?
So some strong words from Lamers, as you heard. They both say they want to see these task forces being led by Black students and faculty and staff. Lamers says he wants to see measures taken to protect Black faculty and staff as well, more students being hired for TA and RA positions, a complete program overhaul to rethink anti-Black racism, and he also wants to see the university stop partnering with police and rethink how security is done on campus. Chris.
Thanks, Tamina. The CBC's Tamina Aziz live at the University of Windsor tonight. Getting migrant workers tested for COVID-19 is proving more difficult than expected for public health officials in Windsor and Essex County. Erie Shores Health Care opened an assessment center in Leamington on Tuesday. The goal is to get 8,000 of the workers in our region tested. But according to the Migrant Workers Community Program, some are afraid of getting sick. Others are afraid of losing their jobs. Jacob Barker spoke with Martin Varela, the chair of the group, earlier today.
People are scared. I know some people is scared that they can be getting the virus at the facilities. Is why we make that video that shows the facilities very safe to go, and that's the situation. And the other situation is a lot of the workers, they think they're gonna lose money if they test positive. Is why I'm explaining. There is protection in place. There is government support, and there is insurance disability support. So they don't gonna lose that. So we encourage them to go.
Do you think that there's a reluctance from employers to participate in this?
I know that it's hard for some employers to bring the workers to the facility, and in the past weeks has been on-site testing, and I know some employers that are looking for that, but we have some employers that has been bringing the employees to the facility. We encourage more employers to do that because it's all the resources there. There is not any cost for anyone, and even we have buses that they can use, and we can set up an appointment. I know sometimes could be the fear of they can mix with another farms workers. But what we are doing, we make a schedule and to set up different farms, and usually it's every 20 minutes a bus is coming to the facility, and use that people on that bus go and through that time. Then we finish and we start with another group of people.
What about the reaction that workers are getting in the community there?
I know a lot of people from the community, they welcome them, but there is like everywhere people that doesn't welcome them. But for example, there is workers that go to buy groceries, and many times I saw them there. They have the suit and the mask, and and gloves. So the people I see, the workers I see, they're trying to protect themselves and have all the guidelines in place.
Varela said that there have been 5 or 6 more farms that have brought workers by since they opened the doors of the assessment center on Tuesday, but they'd like to see more. He's also asking for Spanish-speaking volunteers to go to the assessment center in order to help out. In 1 week, families can once again visit their loved ones in long-term care homes and other congregate living homes in Ontario. The province announced it will begin slowly loosening regulations this afternoon. As Lisa Shing reports, families will have to follow strict guidelines to be able to visit.
For 3 months, Leslie Barron hasn't been able to see her mom, Anne, who lives at Crescent Long-Term Care Home in Fergus, Ontario.
I'm a bit sort of leery about how that reunion is going to go after so much time.
Now that the province is allowing visits to long-term care homes not in outbreak as of June 18th, she's excited but knows too well the realities of her mom's dementia.
Is she going to remember me? Is she going to be distrustful of me as a stranger that she hasn't seen for a while?
Though Barron is already thinking about the visit.
As far as I know, she hasn't physically been outside since March. And my mom always loved to sit outside in the sun, so that's maybe something that we'll plan to do.
For exactly 3 months now, Cindy Pritchard was only doing window visits with her mom at Orchard Villa. That facility has seen the highest number of deaths in the province, but news today it's in the clear and in-person visits will be allowed next week.
That's fantastic news. I know my mom will be dancing down the hall, greeting us. It's going to be emotional too. My mom was a person that always loved to be outside, but this time we'd be taking her down to the lake, and you can't do that, right? So it's been hard.
For families who can visit, there will be strict rules to follow.
One visitor per resident at a minimum of 1 visit per week for an outdoor visit only.
In retirement homes, indoor visitors with higher numbers are allowed, but you have to have tested negative for COVID-19 in the last 2 weeks. Other residential care settings will allow outdoor visits of 2 people at a time. In all situations, visitors have to wear masks and physically distance. As the province enters this new phase of reopening, a message from the Premier to the families.
Your sacrifice will not be forgotten. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you.
More than 70% of the province's COVID-19 related deaths have been in long-term care homes. Now, when asked today whether he failed residents in long-term care, Premier Doug Ford denied his government did anything wrong. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
Nurses in Ontario say their latest pay increase of 1% has become an insult to their profession.
Nothing is changing. It's getting worse. Morale is probably as low as I've ever seen it. And you're called essential, but you're really just a body that can be replaced.
It's absolutely exhausting for so many of them. They have been working beyond belief in hours. We need to be protected, but we need to be compensated fairly.
Frost clearly says despite working through the pandemic, many nurses haven't received their pandemic pay as of yet. The Ontario Nurses Association says the union's hands are tied as the province passed legislation that caps public sector wages at 1%. Bill 124 applies to teachers and nurses, but not local police or doctors. The ONA has tried to push the government on this, but the province says it's out of their hands.
Nurses are heroes in our healthcare system. They have risen to the challenge. They have responded in our long-term care homes, in our hospitals, in home and community care settings. I know that there are some issues outstanding, but the matter was heard by the arbitrator. It was an independent process, protected everyone's rights, and so that isn't something for us to question. That's outside of our jurisdiction.
The province says the legislation is designed to protect public sector jobs and that pandemic pay is starting to be paid out as of this week. Well, phase 2 of reopening starts for much of the province tomorrow, including Chatham-Kent. A number of businesses like hair salons, outdoor restaurant patios, churches at 30% capacity, beaches and provincial parks will be allowed to open while physical distancing. Sarnia Lambton and Windsor-Essex do not have that green light for phase 2, and for Chatham-Kent's medical officer of health, it's a concern.
We have no intention of building walls or anything like that, and we certainly love and respect our neighbors. But I would ask that people who have any symptoms whatsoever that could be compatible with COVID-19, not only respiratory symptoms, but loss of smell and taste, just malaise, feeling badly, and so forth, not come to Chatham-Kent, or if they have any history of exposure.
Well, some spaces will be opening up with phase 2 as per that green light. Some facilities like municipal pools are going to stay closed. Splash pads will stay closed as well until play structures are allowed to open, and day camps will also remain closed. Same with any kind of organized activity that would allow the close proximity of children to one another. Askin, Peter, Russell, and Bobby Streets. They're all named after prominent figures in Windsor's history who all at one point owned slaves. A Black historian is calling for people in the city to reconsider who exactly they want to glorify and explains why replacing those street names altogether might not actually be the best option.
There certainly are people who think that these street names should be taken down. I'm actually not one of them. I think that this is an opportunity for conversation. If we just remove history altogether, it removes the opportunity to learn from that history. So we could replace these street names with other names, but then there would be nothing that would help people to understand the context around how this area was founded, who was involved in founding this area, the fact that it wasn't just rich people of European descent, but it was also obviously the indigenous forebears who were here prior to their arrival and who continue to be here, and people of African descent. We have to be really careful about who we're lifting up and how we're honoring people. What we honor and who we choose to honor says a lot about us as a society. Slave-owning rich white families are being honored in this way, and yet it's very rare in a town like this to find street names or places or even schools that are named after persons of color, visible minorities, indigenous people, and others. So we've got to kind of restore that balance. And one of the ways we can do that is to at least tell the truth and provide the context around these early examples of slave-owning families that we keep honoring around here so much.
Now, many of those street names fall within Windsor's Ward 2, and Councillor Fabio Costante says that he has not received any calls about the specific issues, but adds that this is a discussion that people should take very seriously. City officials are working to make the Little River and Ganachio trails a safer place. This comes 3 years after a vicious attack there, which left a 75-year-old woman dead. The new signs that you're seeing there were unveiled along the East End Trail earlier today, and they'll give directions on where to go, plus GPS coordinates in case of an emergency. Anne Widholm was out for a walk when she was attacked and died 14 months later. Her pastor says that the safety measures are a great idea.
Anne would walk each day, just enjoying God's creation, but also just getting exercise and then cleaning up the area to be a blessing to the community. I think she would appreciate these measures that have been put in place, just because it adds to safety measures and maybe a sense of security and being in the community, being out in this area.
Mayor Drew Dilkin says that the plans were already in place to add signage before her death, but that this highlighted the need for those markers. Some other big changes announced today on how our city is going to mark Canada Day. It will be very different from this scene you're seeing here. A look at the parade from a few years ago. Windsor will be celebrating virtually this year because of COVID-19. That means no parade. The Windsor Parade Corporation made the announcement earlier today, but folks are encouraged to decorate their porches, their yards, balconies, and submit photos where you could possibly win a prize. The Canada Day Parade dates back to 1959, and we'll leave you with this look of the olden days. And when we come back, Colette Kennedy will break down the forecast for the weekend. What a storm last night. Hail the size of golf balls in our area. Take a look at some of the damage and the cleanup effort here. Despite the severe weather, no reports of a tornado for Windsor-Essex, according to Environment Canada. But still, just take a look at all this damage that it caused. We'll bring in Colette Kennedy here now. Colette, Windsor's fire chief said that there were 33 storm-related calls just here in our area. But I know my folks, they live in London, and something different out there, eh?
Yes, that's right, Chris. That was in that area, that vicinity, where the tornado warning actually went up last night from Environment Canada. And in that region, it seems as though there were 2 tornadoes. Now, there will still be an investigation to determine if it was exactly 2, the strength, so how to categorize them, and then also the path, how long they were on the ground. So all of that's still to come. But I thought I'd back us up and just look at the radar. I've slowed this way down because these storms were moving much more quickly than that line of storms. I've slowed it down so you can get an image here. And this is from about 7:30 to 8. So this would be the tornado that was seen in Newbury, but also in Glencoe as well. So kind of between Chatham, Kent, and London region here near Highway 2. And then if I jump this forward and take you closer to about 8:30 southeast of London, between London and Tillsonburg, this would be the Belmont one that was also reported. So again, we'll still wait to get the reports and have more information about that. And at least no one was harmed. There was some structural damage reported and more trees and things like that, but nobody was harmed from this storm. It didn't hurt today, did it, to see our temperature back to seasonal, the humidity down as well, and we're sitting there right now. This is an average high for this time of year, and here we are, 25 degrees. You only add 1 in terms of getting the humidex. So it's much more comfortable. Total departure from the air mass we had yesterday. And there is another cold front that's actually approaching us. This one doesn't have a lot of moisture to work with. And in fact, if we look at the model projections, watch what kind of happens here as I play this forward and how it mostly dries up and breaks apart. So it's isolated shower possible later tonight. Yes, I don't really think we'll see anything. Now, there's a little bit of a different scenario tomorrow. Much of the day looks okay to start, then more cloud cover, and then by the evening seeing some showers and possibly embedded thunderstorms. So that's late Friday into Saturday morning. But hey, then the weekend comes in and we get to clear things out and sets us up for a nice stretch of weather. These are your temperatures overnight tonight. Again, a very slim chance for some wet conditions. 19 to 20, a cooler day tomorrow, especially when that cloud cover comes in, but not quite as breezy as it was today with those westerly winds. They're going to turn more towards the north. That chance of showers, other than that, look at that string of nice days, although the temperature's down and then it's coming up, Chris.
No, not bad at all. It's always appreciated to have that detailed breakdown and then to end it off with something like that. That's why you're the best, Colette.
Yeah, some good news. I want to leave you with good news, man.
No, this is fantastic. Thanks again.
You're welcome.
Now, coming up after the break, there's been a lot of discussions about systemic racism and ways organizations can tackle it. We'll bring you what Justin Trudeau has said about the RCMP after the break. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says that he still has confidence in RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucki. Lucki spoke yesterday describing systemic racism as a matter of unconscious bias within the RCMP. At a face mask printing business this morning, Trudeau expressed support for the RCMP chief, but echoed what critics of the force have said all along.
That phrase, the system's not broken, it was made this way, is a very difficult thing for people within positions of authority within systems to recognize. It's difficult for me as a Prime Minister to recognize that the Government of Canada is regularly guilty of systemic discrimination. It's just really hard to change. And what it takes is a recognition and a desire to make these changes.
Trudeau says Lucki has brought changes to the force since she took on the job, and he believes that her efforts will make a huge difference in combating systemic racism ahead. Trudeau's Indigenous Service Minister later noted that no government institution or even his own party is immune to the problem. Green Party leader Elizabeth May was blunt, calling the RCMP a racist institution. We want to tell you about a special Windsor morning show that's happening tomorrow. You're going to hear from local artists, heroes in our community, doing what they can to raise people's spirits during these tough times. And for now, a sneak peek at one of those chats with Leave Those Kids Alone. We talked to them about what they've been up to during this pandemic and how music might be able to help during these trying times.
Playing gigs everywhere, but now we can't, so we're just trying to still practice, and that's why we're practicing in our garage. Where the streets have no name, where the streets have no name.
I think it's about utopia. You know, it's about a place where the streets have no name, where colors don't define us. To transport yourself to that place for about 4.5 minutes is a very positive thing.
And you'll hear more tomorrow morning on Windsor Morning, 97.5 FM here in Windsor. Thanks for watching us. Make sure you and your family stay safe tonight.